I'm a loser. It's so difficult as a 41-year-old immigrant who has been here for 20 years to say these words. I came here with a lot of ambition, a lot of passion, a lot of zeal to succeed. I had a lot of purpose and I had big plans. And the way my life was going in my first few years of getting to the UK, where I am now, is very far from where I find myself currently. I made such progress in a very short time, and my trajectory was just upwards. In less than a week, I got myself my national insurance number. I just went to a local catering company, registered as a silver service agent, and I got my NI number in 5 days. Most of my peers did not even know what that meant. That's how focused I was, and I had a list of things I had to accomplish. 2 weeks later, I got my provisional driving license. I knew that I had to settle. But in all of this, I had no plans of being here 20 years later. All I knew was I came like a postgrad student to get my education, get a job anywhere in the world, and the sky will be my limit. But to go through the difficult first few years as a student, to pay £12,000 in 12 months with only an initial deposit that I knew that I had to hustle. After having my NI number, my provisional driving license, I went and secured myself my first job in less than 3 weeks. This was obviously part-time like a student in the Royal Mail. And again, that was a different story. I can tell you guys how that came very quickly, and the day after I lost it. But there were bigger plans for me, I can say. Because after that, I had my first retail part-time job, which worked around my schedule. And then a few weeks later after that, I got myself my first customer service job working for an insurance and financial company. And guess what? I did these 2 part-time jobs while doing a full-time master's program. It took me 18 months, and that helped me to pay my fees, although I still had a big chunk after that. But when I looked at how things were going, I had some big plans. I started looking for jobs everywhere because I did a master's in international relations, so I knew that I could work anywhere. I looked for a few jobs, but it was hard, and everybody kept saying, you need to settle down. You need to first of all have your papers in this country so that if anything went wrong, you could always come back. And that seemed like the best advice at the time. So immediately I put my search for my ideal job in the back burner, and I started looking for a way to get myself legal in the UK. And this is a story that a lot of immigrants face. When you come here with big ambitions, very quickly they get crushed when the reality sets in. The reality where you feel like you are less of a citizen because you're not British. We used to see jobs back then and they say you have to have no restrictions on your immigration. And then you think this job is a fantastic job. Why do I want to go back abroad? Why do I want to go back home? And then you find yourself settling. You do whatever it takes to get your papers. Some people got married. Some people you do anything possible to make sure that you're settled. And that's where we did not know that was the first trap to get you to stay here. It's not a bad thing at all. Don't get me wrong, the UK has been beautiful for me. I have built a family. I have a family of 6 now with 4 beautiful kids. But what has it done to me, and how has it killed my ambition and made me feel like I'm a loser? It's trapped me in a way that I cannot even tell you. I did not only get my master's, I got my first job and I worked in telecoms, which was a decent job. But I still felt like this is not the life that I knew, because my parents studied here and moved back, so I knew that was the right thing to do for many reasons. When I had my first child, I was very, very depressed. I was very low because I had no help. It was very cold. It could get really gloomy in the winter, and just the lack of flexibility. I saw a lot of my friends who took the bold step to move back home after studying. They were living the life I could only dream of. When you see your friends back home living a good life, it hits different from you here. They just get up in the morning, they have help, the weather is good, the kids are in private schools that they can actually afford. They They just have the family around them, and they can bring up the kids in the way that they want with little or no intrusion from the government like we do here. If you're African or a foreigner, you know what I mean. We have a lot of restrictions on how we can bring our kids up. I knew at some point that I could not do this long term. So I took the bold step and I resigned my job in a telecoms company after working there for 2 years, and I went home and I started looking for jobs. That's a whole different story I'll tell you guys, because I attended 4 interviews, and the one that I actually got a job offer, the pay, I can tell you guys that the pay would not even pay for my gas and electric in the UK. But I was too naive to do the proper maths and think about what that would mean for me if I was looking to move back home. It could just be a stepping stone while looking for the ideal job, because that job, I didn't get it because of my qualifications. I just got it because it was like a very easy job to get. But I declined. I felt like I was above that. I deserved more, a bit of pride, a bit of ego, and I came back. And when I came back, I knew this is me. I have to make it work here. So I did everything to make sure I made it work. Now you ask me why I'm feeling like a loser 20 years later. 1, I did not expect that I'll have to work for another 25 years. That's the retirement age, 65. So I'm thinking, 20 years later, what do I have to show? Yes, I've got a mortgage, which is the biggest trap ever. Because once you have this mortgage, you have a little or no leeway, because you have this big bill and this big commitment, financial commitment, which you have to turn up for every month, like it or not. Even times that work is difficult, you have no choice, because you have to keep this job to pay your mortgage. And the next trap is when you have kids. They're beautiful. I love kids and I have 4 of mine. But when you start having kids abroad, that's the biggest trap. They start going to school, they build a life here, they get older, they know what they want, they'll find it harder to adapt back home. And then this becomes their home. They become first generation immigrant kids who don't have the same fight, the same zeal, the same love for where we come from. And that is the next trap after a mortgage that most of us find ourselves in. The third trap is the career choices that we make. Not all career choices can work back home. If you go into mainstream, like things like banking, finance, maybe that's different, accounting. But when you go into the health sector, you go into things like customer services or sales, it's a different kettle of fish back home. It's so hard to find jobs that will pay. Imagine what a doctor earns in the US or the UK and think about what they earn back home. It's a no-brainer. Or teaching, certain jobs just find it harder to adapt. And then you start paying into your pension. You start thinking about your retirement. And then you have the big question that if you move back, what would happen with your kids? Will they move back with you? Where are you moving back to? Do you have a home? Because back home, like it or not, most people want to build themselves a nice home. Not just a home, a nice home, because you've lived abroad for 25, 30 odd years and you need to move big. But how do you do that when you have all the commitments here? You have a mortgage, you have kids, you have day-to-day transactions, you have to cater for, you have a car, loan maybe, your kids expect holidays every year. How do you then set aside enough money to get yourself a befitting home back home to suit people's standards? And that's the biggest trap. And then when you get to like 40, after working for 20 years, and you think that all I've done is paid into a mortgage that interest keeps swallowing, and then you look at your friends back home who earn 1/3 of what you earn, everything taken into account. They're building themselves homes without mortgage loans. They're living better. It's worse when they travel and come here and you see how they're living. The kids are grounded. The kids have a different upbringing. They have a different perspective on life. And then you start asking yourself these questions like me now at 40. Was it all a scam? What do I do? There are options. You can maybe downsize. If you don't have a big family size in the UK, go for a smaller home and hope that somehow you can afford to get yourself a home and build a decent and a modest house, as opposed to what our parents or uncles or people older than us did. They came here and lived in very squalor conditions and built themselves massive homes which they've never lived in. It's been occupied by aunties and uncles or grandparents or people who don't even know our struggles here. And then before you can actually retire, you maybe lost your sense of enjoyment. You cannot even climb the stairs to go to your own home. And you've worked so hard for nothing. Do you want to be that? I don't want to be that. So the realization hit me last year. When I looked around, I thought, if I lose my job today, where do I go to? I have this massive mortgage, and according to the government, I still have about 20 years to pay. Of course, I can pay it quicker if I wanted to, but the way the system is engineered is to keep you in the system. You work hard, paycheck after paycheck. It's a very, very socialist economy, which is great for some people. So you're giving back a lot of what you earn in tax. You're contributing to your pensions, which is a good thing, because if you move back, you can always claim your pensions back. But again, this is not without caveats. When your kids start having kids, your grandkids, where do you want to be? Do you want to be in their lives, or do you want to be back home? There is political unrest back home. Where is the sweet spot? Where is the sweet spot as an immigrant? Where do you belong? Our kids very, very fully belong in this economy. They've never had our struggles. They might never have our struggles. You know, I get it's difficult talking about this because they don't know. They don't understand what we have gone through to give them what we've given them, the sacrifices that we've made. And sometimes to the detriment of even them when the government intervenes sometimes in their upbringing. They are okay. They'll get themselves in the systems. They don't have to worry too much about sounding different, about settling in, understanding work politics. But there's that one thing that they'll always feel, that this is not their home. Because even if you were born here and you look different physically, you always feel like you're an underdog. And that's the reason why I struggled when I came here. I felt like I had to be beyond. I had to go one step lower than what I'll get back home, because I had to compensate being in the UK. Sometimes you get a job that you deserve and you feel like you're just an immigration number because of things like equality, work equality, and you're feeling a gap because you're a black woman, perhaps, or an African. It's really tough. It is. And it's one thing that I wish that I knew before. I would have come to this country, studied and done what I had to do to make sure that I have the flexibility of taking maybe my kids back when we're younger and bringing them back older. That's what our parents did, most of our parents. But we live and we learn. But I want to ask you guys today, what advice, what would you say if you've managed to find that sweet spot where you have a good career that you can transfer skills? Maybe you've had a business or multiple businesses where you can be anywhere in the world, where your kids remember where they come from and will be happy to visit you in your retirement. Otherwise, in the UK or anywhere abroad, you might end up in a care home. Most of us don't want to think about that. We'd rather be home where your relatives look after you. Which relatives do we have left? Everybody's left. Think about this. If you're still a young person starting off life abroad, ask yourself, I've always said this, what are your long-term goals? Do you plan to remain here and maybe die here? Live with your grandkids and make this your home? Or do you really want to go back and get yourself a decent job? Or do you want to go back and settle home? It depends on what your plans are. But either ways, it's always a difficult question to ask. Is this happiness? Is this fulfillment? What would you rather do different? And is going abroad overhyped? I see my friends back home and they're living the life that I can only dream of. They have the best of both worlds. Were we a bit impatient? Did we have the wrong orientation? Did our governments fail us? There are loads of questions that have no answers. But what I want to do is I want anybody who has taken the leap to leave abroad and go and start afresh, especially at an older age, to reach out to me and tell me the story. I don't even mind traveling. I don't mind traveling to meet you wherever you are in the world, especially if you're an African who's made it abroad and gone back to your country to give back. Those are the stories that inspire me. So please, I'll put my email address at the bottom of this, and I'll wait to hear from anybody who has succeeded to crack the code, because we are in a matrix. You get a mortgage, you get stuck, you find it hard to leave, and you're thinking this mortgage is my retirement for my kids. You have the kids, they don't want to go anywhere. They'll have the kids and they'll remain here. You even get to the point where you want to die and be buried here so that your grandkids can know where you are. You don't want to cut ties with your kids by going back home. It's difficult. You are in careers that you cannot even start looking for jobs where you come from. Business is difficult if you're not there. It's just hard to find that sweet spot. If you've done it, please share. But at the moment, I feel like, where do I go from here? It's freezing outside, it's the winter, it's snowed. And I'm just asking myself, is this the life I want to live for the next 25 years, working every day to pay off my bills? The bills just come and they go. The weather is horrible. I have no lease of life. I feel like I'm trapped in a country where I don't belong. Please, if you've made this, share. I just had this thought today and I decided to share with you guys. I hope to hear from you. And like always, this is Lulu Diaries, where I share my opinion, what I'll tell my younger self, and sometimes I don't have answers to everything. And I'm sure that my listeners and my community, you guys, might have better ideas. But I want to tell stories. I want to visit people who have made it and share their stories to encourage that all hope is not lost and it's never too late to start afresh. I'm 41 now, and I think that my life has only started after 20 years of feeling trapped. Thanks if you've watched the video up to the end, and I'll be coming up with a few stories and a series which I cannot wait to share with you guys. Anyway, if this is the first time that you've seen one of my videos, please consider subscribing, because we share a lot of valuable information here, especially those of us in the diaspora trying to navigate life and get a decent living. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. If you've not liked the video yet, give us a like, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.